Traveling is about the gorgeous feeling of teetering on the unknown. That was a quote from Anthony Bourdain. Great traveler, food critic, chef. Cool guy. The late and great Anthony Bourdain. So yeah, speaking of traveling, I'm going to take you guys on a little journey. A journey of knowledge. History, of course, that's my subject, so not to lay it down on you right now. So, in about, the 400s AD, I think most of us know, or at least know of, the Roman Empire. It's the Great Roman Empire, based in, Rome, Italy. Almost conquered half the known world at the time. Just fell to a bunch of barbarians. And that's it, right? Wrong. Years ago, before this fall, there was a guy named Constantine, right? Constantine the Great. You might have heard of him. Was a Roman emperor. Wasn't quite Italian. I don't want to mislead anyone, saying that you can only be an emperor if you were Italian. That in the later years of the Roman Empire, that wasn't the case. You could have been Spanish, Greek, Illyrian, which is like a fancy term for saying someone from like the Caucasus, like, Armenians, Georgians, Slavs, you get it. Even Arab. There's a lot of them. So my point is, Constantine, coming from like a mixed background, sort of, kinda, got the idea of once he became in charge, he was kind of like a pioneer, inspired by a lot of things, which I'll get into, to move the capital, not actually move the capital, but like the prestige and the honor that was Rome, because you didn't really see, at that time, Rome wasn't as popular, I guess you could say, and just not, valuable where it was. The action was kind of going more towards the east, a place we know today as Istanbul, Turkey. But back then, it was a little Greek city called Byzantium. It was actually named after a king, Byzas. And it would happen to be right in the crossroads of the Bosphorus Sea. So think of like a squiggly line, and you have one part of the city here and one part of the city here. This was the Asian side, this was the European side. So if you went this way, you went towards like Iran, India, all that stuff. You went this way, you went towards Europe. Anyway, it was a great strategic position. Like if you want to trade an upper hand against your enemy, this was the place to be. This was the chilling spot, Constantine was like, oh, I see this. I'm going to take it and make it my own. And that's what he did. He spoke the lingo, convinced the citizens, and he moved his entourage there, and boom, we have a new capital of the Roman Empire. All this occurred in the mid or late 300s AD, and he made it happen. He made it work, and he named it after himself. So it wasn't called Byzantium, it was called Constantinople, after him. It's Constantinople. So there you go. That's a little fact about that. Just wanted to get that across. Now, why the heck haven't heard of this? I mean, maybe you did. Maybe I'm preaching to the choir here. But for those who didn't and just think Rome died in the 400s AD, I mean, you'd be half right. The idea of that bigger Roman Empire, it did die, kind of, with that. But in a way, it kind of just moved on, like anything else. In fact, on Constantine's deathbed, he was inspired by the great, JC, Jesus Christ. He was baptized on his deathbed, became a Christian, made it okay to be Christians again, make them Christians great again. That was his punchline. I don't know. I'm just saying. But he made it happen. He made it work. He changed the game, and he won a lot of battles. Most of them were like civil wars against other Roman emperors. But long story short, anyway, he was the top dog. He named a city after himself, and he extended the Roman Empire. So now while the West kind of fell to pieces, the East gained more prestige, trade opportunity. I mean, yeah, they had their ups and downs. They had to kind of climbed the ladder very slowly, but they did it and made it work. All the way up until about 1453. That was the fall of Constantinople. Now, here's my question right here. What if Constantinople didn't fall? Now, I'm going to call these guys, the reason why I call them the, extended Roman Empire is because if you went back in time and talked to a citizen of, Byzantium or Constantinople, they're not going to say, well, I'm a Byzantine. No. They're going to say, oh, well, I'm Roman. In fact, they've been saying that since they were liberated in, Greek time, like the different colonies and stuff, that they belonged to different Greek isles that Byzantium and Constantinople owned, when they, were liberated by the big Greek movement back in the day, because there was like a Greek-Turkish war, yada yada. Anyway, long story short, my point is, they thought of themselves as Romans. End of story. And once again, you didn't have to be a Roman from Italy. That wasn't the point of this. Given their area, it was a big mess of people. So you had a lot of Greeks in the city, number one. The Latin lingo that dominated the West, actual Rome, was like, Latin. But not in the East. Greek was more spoken, so they adapted that more. You had a big mix of, you had a Jewish quarter, you had Armenians, Georgians, you had Vikings that converted to Christianity, a whole slew of people, even Arabs, the ones that weren't fighting, even some of the Turkish tribes that eventually conquered the place, all kind of lived in some kind of harmony, one way or another. Anyway, they just kind of faded with the times. You had another empire in the West, if you call it that, called the Holy Roman Empire, which was filled with, Latins. They believed in, the Catholic way, where the Greeks kind of believed in a Eastern Christianity, and they hated each other. Basically, it was a few, words written different or interpretations and different Bibles, all Christian, mind you. They just, couldn't get along or, agree on the same doctrine. I don't know, it's confusing, whatever. But that happened. So you had that going. I don't want to dive too much into this because I want to get to my main point here. So they fell. They almost thrived a little bit. They had a little help from, I guess, former enemies / trade partners, the Genovese, Genoa, the Republic of Genoa in Italy, and the Venetians. They did their best with a little, not so much help from the Pope. I guess he couldn't care less. He figured, well, it's one less heathen I have to worry about. I feel like he could have done more. That's my opinion. The coastal Italian cities try to help them out. No avail. City eventually fell, became Turkified. The entire place shifted from Christianity to Islam, and now it's Istanbul in modern Turkey. There you go. But my point was, okay, so now I've established that this was the continuation of the Roman Empire. Rome never fell. It just kind of, passed to this place. And it lasted until 1453. There you go. Okay, now what happened? Here's the twist, the Shyamalan twist, I call it. If it didn't fall, what if, that Roman Eastern Empire prospered into, like, let's say the 19th, 20th century? How would that look? So, I don't have much hope because, as much as I love that empire, they just, in the end, like the 1400s, just wasn't looking good for them. You know what I mean? Enemies surrounding them. They were losing islands to the Italians or the Turks, and it was just all out bad. But let's just say, these mercenaries, these Italian mercenaries that, the last, Byzantine emperor hired to protect them, won the day. Let's say they just, beat back the Turks so bad they said, forget it, you keep the city, I'm out of here. Suppose that happened, right? I'm painting you a picture now. They would probably have to or at least, owe half of that win to the mercenary guys, right? You ever see mercenaries before? Not the friendliest person, because they work for money, so their loyalties are kind of like, flip floppy. But these guys were pretty straight. They were fighting a common enemy, you know, despite the friction they had with, their Greek counterparts. Still, I could see a problem there where, okay, it's like, the mercs could be like, okay, we won the day, you guys are free again, you have your city. What about ours? What do we get in return? So, the last emperor would probably have to cut a deal, with whoever was there, the Venetians or the Genoa, and probably make it like a, you know, pseudo vassal state, maybe, if they would have went with that deal. Now, mind you, there was other Byzantine states. You had the despot, which is like a massive land with a leader. That was also, they had leaders. I don't want to say emperors, but I guess kings or whatever. That had the bloodline that shared the same with the other Byzantine emperors. They just kind of broke away. They don't go back to where they came from. Same area, sort of, kind of, but you had that. You have the despot of Moria. I want to say, I don't think I'm pronouncing that right, but I'll leave a link at the bottom so you can check it out. It makes sense of this rambling I'm talking about. And you had the Empire of Trebizond, which was another dynasty from the Byzantines that broke away and established their own little kingdom. In fact, I think it was between those two, or the last ones to go. So once Constantinople fell, then the Turks picked at those guys until they fell, pretty much ending, any chance for the Byzantines. There was a few Greek islands that, got the least end of the blow. I mean, they eventually fell down the line because the Turks were just ruthless. They kind of like kicked ass and take names, pretty much. There was one Greek island, Corfu, I believe, that stayed in Venetian hands for like a long, long time. So, but once again, it's considered an Italian rule, not a Byzantine rule. So, it's pretty complicated. But anyway, let's say, let me go back to my original question. What if they survive? What if they live through this madness, right? I think it would be akin to a state in the Caucasus, like Armenia, Georgia, Azerbaijan, or an Eastern European country, much like Romania, Moldova, maybe the Ukraine too. Anyway, Eastern Europe, put it that way. Slovakia, Czech Republic, those kind of countries. They would be probably under a lot of stress, given that any minute could be like doom. What if the Turks come back and they're not ready? So let's pretend that they lived and they survived and they prospered until later ages, and they gained their independence. Let's say they've been under their hands of the Italians, and Italians passed it to the French, because Napoleon kind of like took a lot of French property, believe it or not. And then the Italians beat him back, and then let's say the Russians came, and then that happened. 2 world wars, but the place is still standing. A shadow of its former self, okay? It's basically a tourist spot, but it's a poor, this, I don't want to say Eastern Europe, because it's not really Eastern Europe, alright? This poor, Western Asia kind of country, okay? It makes its money on tourism, its history, and the occasional documentary, or food, maybe. They have a unique cuisine in Constantinople. Actually, Greeks that left Constantinople, the ones that could, moved back to to regular Greece, like Athens and all that, brought with them this certain flair. It was like the Greek cooking, just with like a little more spice to it. I thought that was kind of interesting. But anyway, so yeah, that's my opinion. I think it would be a kind of a fractured state, like a breakaway kind of country, like the old Yugoslav Republic, like the former countries of the Eastern Bloc. I'm sure it would probably fell under communism. Maybe it didn't. I mean, Greece itself, held out and stick with the whole, Western Europe capitalism approach. Now, here's another question, right? So, given that, in Constantinople, the majority were Greeks, the ruling class was Greek, what about the other Greeks, like, Athens, Cyprus, Crete, the greater Greek cities, right? How would that work, huh? I think they would treat it much how, like, you know, mainland Greece treats Cyprus. Cyprus is an island in the eastern Mediterranean, borderline Middle East, where Greece is, closer to Western Europe, you know, Baltic places, all that stuff. But if Cyprus was in trouble, they would probably send aid. Same deal. I think if Constantinople lasted the 21st century and was threatened, I think the Greeks would be in the mainland would be obligated to help them. This is all speculation. None of this is true. I'm just saying, entertaining the thought. Okay, I mean, what else are we gonna talk about during the pandemic? Sports. Who's playing, right? I mean, come on, guys. I'm doing this just to educate you and have a little fun. So like a what if scenario. So yeah, back to that. If they did live through it somehow, some way, and made it, that's what I think would happen. All that. I think they would get probably a lot of help from the other Greek states and try to keep from going under again in the 19th, 20th century. I mean, I'm sure they wouldn't prosper, but like I said, being such a historic place, they would draw in archaeologists, scientific teams, tourism, and that probably would be, the bulkhead to keep them going. Much like how Croatia survived, the Bosnian War, but now, I mean, look at it, because of its historic roots, and the buildings are still historic. Game of Thrones was filmed there. They make wine. They know how to make revenue. I think if Constantinople lasted, in the 19th or 20th century, this is how it would have, made money and continue to prosper somewhat, But this is all fantasy. Unfortunately, it was, the downfall. It never recovered. Like I said, it was a hard feat, even with or without help from outside. Now, their spiritual successors, the people that inherited, I guess, the prestige and honor, they call themselves a quote-unquote Byzantine. By the way, the Byzantine is not really a thing that they call themselves. Really, like I said, they consider themselves Romans. Byzantine, the term was invented by a archaeologist, way back when they were doing a lot of exhibition sites and all that stuff. And because the place was called Byzantium way back when, he figured, oh, well, these are Byzantines, just to symbolize things. But deep down inside, they were Romans. They were always Romans, and they call themselves Romans. So that's it. Anyway, it would have been interesting having a part of the Roman Empire surviving up until that time. I think that's, pretty cool and interesting to think about, especially if you're a history buff like me. Like, you could say that. I mean, Rome is still around. The Colosseums are still around. Ancient Rome is still, visible. And to an extent, so is Constantinople. I mean, yeah, it's called something different now. It's called Istanbul. And it's no longer Orthodox. It's Muslim. But a lot of the buildings are still standing. The Hagia Sophia, the greatest church in the world at the time, was in Constantinople. And you could pay to go see it. It's like a museum now. So the fragments, the ghosts, are still around of the Byzantine Empire. And the people that inherited, all this craziness, if I had to pick, would probably be the Russians, because, and I say spiritual in quotations, because to me, that's the greatest way to go about explaining this. So, spiritual successor means it's not a direct succession, but it follows in its footsteps. I say Russia because when it was called the Kingdom of Rus, the Rus were a bunch of Vikings, right? Were baptized by Greek Orthodox monks became Orthodox. There was a lot of intermarrying from, Byzantine nobles into the Rus kingdom. And a lot of the big shots of the Rus Empire, adapted titles from the Byzantines and like rituals from the Byzantines. When it came to the noble stuff, anyway. I mean, they were their own people, but you could see the likeness, But yeah, if I had to pick, it would definitely be them, the Russians. In fact, at one time, because they quote unquote had the last Byzantine princess pretty much intermarry one of the gruesome kings, they kind of called themselves, oh well, we're Third Rome now, and there shall be no other. So you see how that goes to someone's head. But yeah, that's about it. I mean, yeah, there was a lot of families that escaped, much like the Romanovs that were all executed by the during the Russian Revolution. Communist Party kind of wiped out the imperial dynasty of Russia, but some escaped. Some intermarried with other dynasties all throughout Europe and kind of were safe. Much like Dracula. Dracula's extended family still exists today, believe it or not. Much like the Byzantines. Byzantine families intermarried not just with the Turks. I guess they had no choice with that, but with other Eastern European and Western European nobility. Some went to Portugal. A lot of them went to Italy. In fact, to this day, there's still Greek-speaking cities throughout Southern Europe, Italy, that still speak that old lingo, and I think that's a testament of time that shows the influence, because Southern Italy, belonged not just to the Greeks but to the extended Byzantine Empire. Not a lot, but they had a lot of influence there, and they were there for a while. And yeah, through all that intermarrying, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if there's at least maybe a handful of descendants that probably don't even know. The Byzantine title wasn't really that popular back then. Like, if you came from like an Austrian king or someone from like the Holy Roman Empire, like, you were a big shot. Because Constantinople fell, it just wasn't the in thing anymore. So those titles were sold off. But yes, I do believe there's probably someone still kicking that has a little, Byzantine blood in them. I don't know. But, yeah, that's my opinion. That's my fantasy guess. If Constantinople was still around today, it would be a tourist site. And, yeah, a great place to hang out and drink some, spiced Greek wine or whatever. I don't know. I'm guessing their wine would be probably drastically different from the Greek mainland. But yeah, I like entertaining the thought. I create these videos, especially like the history ones, not out of sheer boredom. I mean, sometimes it's boredom, but it's to just, straight up entertain you guys. I feel like, people could benefit from certain stuff, and, that's why I do it. But yeah, like I was saying, I like, talking about history. It's a favorite subject of mine. So, I mean, with kind of like that balled up knowledge, I mean, why not share with you guys? It might learn something. It might be interesting to you. I don't know. But another reason is we should know the past, just a little bit of it. The important stuff or some stuff we never heard at all, just because we don't repeat it in the future. That's the best defense we have at, succeeding and living happy lives. If we know something that's been done already, that's, either wrong or, messed up people's ways of life, if we remember that, it'll be try really hard not to do it again. We're not losing, right? We now know better not to do what we did back then now, and succeed as a people, Let's see, any more thoughts to add? Oh yeah, Skills can be taught, but character, either you have it or you don't. That was another quote from Anthony Bourdain. Yeah, and that's really all I have to have. I hope you guys enjoyed this. This was my little history slash, what if scenario. And I hope it was kind of entertaining. I'll leave a few comments down below. Not comments. I'll leave a few links down below. Just in case you guys want to, dig deep and make sense out of what the hell I'm talking about. All right, guys. Speaking of comments, that's what I meant to say. Yeah, tell me guys what you think. Was it too long? Did you learn something new? Was it interesting? Do you want to hear another what if scenario? Do you care? Let me know. What's up? All right, guys. Thanks for sticking around. I hope you're all healthy and staying safe. All right, guys. Thanks for listening. Until next time. Peace.